This is Ken Pyle, and we're here at the NTCA annual meeting with Vince Tyson of Plateau Fiber. And Vince, you guys are doing some really interesting things in Clovis, New Mexico. Yesterday we interviewed Gary talking about doing Gigabit. You guys have been doing Gigabit with a little bit of interesting twist to it. Why don't you tell us what you're doing in Clovis?
Well, in Clovis, earlier this year, we ran the business model and decided it was looked good, the financials and from a marketing perspective. So in February, we announced the launch of Gigabit Clovis, where we started offering Gigabit services within the community. And there's really two different aspects. One is the services that we offer. We did have some existing residential areas that we had built in. There were greenfield new developments that were built, as well as the business corridor. On the residential side is where we focus for the business, for the Gigabit services. But we also looked then at overbuilding the rest of the existing residential neighborhoods in order to offer Gigabit services. So we started a pre-registration process where people could express their interest. We broke this first year's area down into 5 zones. And once a zone reached their pre-registration goal, we started building. So far 3 out of the 5 have reached their goal. So we've built the first one, it's up and operational, hooking up customers. The other 2 are currently building and starting to hook up customers as we build. So it's off to a great start.
Well, that's terrific, and it's kind of a unique model for operators. I think it's maybe pioneered by our friends down the street here in Mountain View, but what have you found the challenges of kind of adopting this model as opposed to, say, one where maybe you'd build the whole town first?
Well, certainly from a network perspective, you have to be prepared to jump around a little bit. Sometimes it's easier logistically just to start in one area and start building. But from a customer perspective, it's definitely better because the areas that have the most demand is the areas we'll build first. So that's also how we market it, that the first areas to reach their goal will go ahead and start building. So logistically, there's some challenges, but it's definitely better for the customers. And it's also got the customers excited when they knew that they could affect how quickly we bring it to their neighborhood. We certainly had advocates that were out there promoting Plateau and promoting the project.
And from a regulatory standpoint, is there any special regulations, franchise fees required, or franchises? What sort of regulatory impacts of this approach?
Well, we already had a franchise agreement with the city of Clovis, so everything was covered underneath that. And other than a few permitting on a few state roads, it really has been pretty smooth. The city of Clovis is while they don't favor one provider over another publicly, they really have not created any barriers for us.
From a marketing standpoint, you kind of touched upon this, but you're using the marketing that's already available with the project itself. As you build out, you get people signing up, and they're kind of your salespeople. Are you doing any other kind of marketing, special marketing tactics?
Yeah, certainly we've had a big blitz in the community going around and promoting it with the community leaders. We've done a lot of individual one-on-one and group presentations to civic organizations like the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, those types of people, as well as a lot of mailers, door flyers, and just spreading the word. And so far the word of mouth has been great.
And from a financing standpoint, that's another aspect of this is, this is something that you started many years ago, as you pointed out. You started with the business areas, but how are you financing this as you move into the residential?
Well, Plateau's in a strong enough position that we're able to fund it internally without going to outside sources, so that's helped reduce the risk as well. Of course, we want to reach a certain break-even point and exceed that, but not having to go to outside financing sources has been advantageous for speed for us to be able to get the project underway and get it moving.
Well, and from a population density standpoint, it stands to reason that this is relatively dense. I mean, if you were going outside of Clovis into the rural areas, then it'd probably be a little bit more challenging, right?
Well, definitely overbuilding residential communities, areas, it's a challenge with the expense of all the existing utilities and getting into an established area. So if the density wasn't there, we couldn't take this out to areas outside from a purely competitive perspective. So the density, when you get into a neighborhood, an area of Clovis within the city limits, looks like an area in Mountain View, California. So the demographics and business case works well.
Yeah, but if you're in that fiber to the farm type situation, everything changes, though, right?
Well, certainly to be in a rural area, we do need high-cost support. And Plateau, we've got a big ILEC area, we're about 25,000 square miles, so it's quite a large service area, and the density is extremely low. We've got about 10,000, actually less than 10,000 customers, about 10,000 access lines. So you divide that out, on average, one customer for every 2.5 square miles, and that's average, knowing that we have 5 towns that have 40% of our customers. So when you look at the rural areas, if it wasn't for high cost support, we couldn't be providing services out there. But we are extending our fiber network out into the rural areas, and currently we can't offer the same service plans, the Gigabit plans, but we hope over time that that piece of the business relaxes and opens up to where we don't have as many restrictions on the speeds we can offer, and therefore offer the same plans. But we are expanding our fiber, like I said, out to the rural areas.
And from a perspective of, you're offering this Gigabit now, so the question is, what does that do to the bandwidth? Are you seeing huge spikes, or can you talk to that at this point?
Yeah, before we launched this, and we were in the business planning phase, we looked at, the concern is once you start offering Gigabit services to everybody, will that really drive your downstream bandwidth demands and increase the cost? So we looked at it and said, we believe that if you were over a certain tier of bandwidth, where the network now was not the constraint of the customer's behavior, that if you give them more, all they'll do is get what they want to do done faster. For example, if you're watching a movie, if it's a 2-hour movie, if it downloads in 7 seconds versus 30 minutes, you're not going to down two movies at the same time because you can only watch one. So the customer experience is better, but the overall bandwidth doesn't increase because everybody fits into a shorter time period when they're actually downloading. So in order to test that theory, we took one existing neighborhood and silently opened them all up to 1 gigabit per second and watched the bandwidth profiles of that area. And it was an immeasurable amount that we saw it change. So we were pretty confident going into it wouldn't increase our bandwidth costs to our upstream providers.
Well, Vince, I appreciate your insight on this and look forward to seeing it someday.
Oh, certainly.
Thanks.
Thank you.